Hello everyone, this is Andres Restart, and today we are going to be talking about why the internet is going crazy about 2D Breath of the Wild. What is 2D Breath of the Wild? Well, apparently, it's the Legend of Zelda, Echoes of Wisdom. Some people are excited about this, but others, not so much. What's going on? Well, that's what I'd like to talk more about today. But before going forward, let me ask that if you do enjoy my content, to please subscribe and hit that notification bell. So myself personally, I was always very curious about that 2D Zelda prototype that they had for Breath of the Wild that they showed off shortly after the release of Breath of the Wild all the way back in the early parts of 2017. That prototype looks so cool. It was 2D Zelda set in the 8-bit style, and we could see Link moving around the environment with all these different abilities and mechanics, similar to Breath of the Wild. And so I've always hoped that maybe they would repurpose that in some way for a full-on game, and from what we're seeing for The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, it kinda seems like they're doing that. I think this becomes most apparent when we see how fire works in the most recent trailer. You can bring out a torch, burn some trees, which will then burn more trees, which then may burn a web that will then create an opening for you. There are some mechanics at play here that are like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, where you can use fire and it can spread. Your abilities and the game world are more dynamic compared to prior older Zelda games. And so from that perspective, Echoes of Wisdom does feel a bit like Breath of the Wild. But it goes beyond that. Looking at the first trailer, the very beginning of the game, we see Link exploring this underground tomb, which reminds me of the opening for Tears of the Kingdom, or how shortly afterwards Zelda escapes and then they show this shot of her looking over this vast expanse of Hyrule, very much like the beginning of Breath of the Wild. And even the logo shares similarities. It has that crackly look, which some people have complained about because they wanted Echoes of Wisdom to shy away from Breath and Tears, but as we will continue on, they're not forgetting about Breath and Tears in the slightest here. In fact, that concept of introducing abilities early on that have a wide variety of applications, that seems to be the core concept of Echoes of Wisdom. Zelda can use her Tri-Rod to create echoes that are essentially copies of different items all throughout the world, and she can use them in so many different circumstances, which will lead to a lot of creative problem solving with a variety of solutions, just like Breath and Tears. But even going beyond that, there's this theory that's continually getting more and more steam, that the rifts, these purple holes or cracks throughout the world, are essentially something like shrines. When you enter them, they are these smaller dungeon-like challenges, and then you can clear them, and they're spread all throughout the map. Now, the difference here, I think rifts are going to clear up, and thus opening more of the map, and that will be interesting, but at this point, it's still a theory, although one that I think is widely supported. Other things we see in the first trailer, though, is a tropical version of the Faron region. Faron wasn't always a tropical region, but that idea came into play with Breath and Tears, and they are continuing that with Echoes of Wisdom. It's confirmed in the second trailer to be the Faron wetlands. We also see that they're bringing back enemy encampments where there's this chest that's on this pedestal or raised platform and you can't get to it till you defeat the enemies around you. It's extremely similar. And then there's also the Ninja Sheikah from Breath and Tears that seem to have that similar design in Echoes of Wisdom. In the second trailer, we see the Gerudo and the Gorons, and they very much appear similar to how they were in Breath and Tears. Even the quest system has made its return. It's similar UI, and you can keep checks of your main quests and your side quests. We've seen proof of the return of the glider, although in this case it might be more like a mini-game. And the map of this game appears to be very large. This one shot here appears to be just a small section of the total map of this game. We are also seeing now horses in a 2D Zelda game, and there's a variety of horses it appears, just like Breath and Tears. Also, there are clothing and accessory options, just like those games as well, and they showed off Bind and Reverse Bond, which appears very much like Ultra Hand from Tears of the Kingdom, another ability with a wide variety of applications. It's a little bit different than Ultra Hand, but there certainly are some similarities. So with all of this in mind, Many people feel that Echoes of Wisdom is just 2D Breath of the Wild or 2D Tears of the Kingdom. And for some people this is exciting, and for others, not so much. I personally am excited about this, because I think they came up with some really good ideas in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. There's a reason they are so popular. Having these abilities with a wide variety of applications, that's a good thing, not a bad thing. Exploring the world and knowing that you can find multiple ways to solve a problem, and that you may be able to go about it in your own way that's different than your friend, that's a cool experience. I don't think that should be going away. They should be building upon this. But at the same time, I can understand wanting Echoes of Wisdom to be its own thing, and I still think it is. Just because there are some core concepts that are carrying over now, I don't think that means that Echoes of Wisdom doesn't stand as its own game. I just think there are certain evolutions that have occurred within the Zelda series that are going to continue moving forward. But something that people would have wanted to see a return in Echoes of Wisdom is perhaps some level of linearity. And from what we've seen so far, it feels like the game is pretty open. Between the larger world, horses, the quest system, these rifts that appear to be the replacements for shrines, it looks like we're going to be able to explore the world and perhaps beat dungeons out of order, just like Breath and Tears. But something I'd like to point out here is that this was actually established with A Link Between Worlds, the prior new 2D Zelda game. That all said, something that I don't think enough people are talking about right now is that it seems like there actually might be some level of linearity in this game. Because in this second trailer, we see that Zelda has 5 hearts, not the 3, implying that she's a bit more progressed into the game. And it's at this point that they introduce the ability Bind. They even show what appears to be the moment when she's taught this ability in order to move the boulder. In Breath and Tears, you were given all of these abilities in a beginning opening section of the game. From what we've seen so far, it doesn't look like Echoes of Wisdom starts in the same way. There is no singular section that you're locked into where you obtain these different abilities after beating these shrines, and then you can use all these abilities afterwards. The opening sequences of the game actually seem fairly linear, and based off when we learn the ability of Bind, that linearity may even extend a bit beyond the introduction to the game. So while I think the game is going to be fairly open, I don't think it's going to be as open as Breath or Tears, and it might be something that falls somewhere in the middle, which I think a lot of fans will be able to appreciate. But something else I understand about these complaints about the comparisons to Breath and Tears is not so much that there's a dislike for Breath and Tears, even though there is some of that. A lot of it's just wanting other parts of the Zelda series to be celebrated and remembered. But I think that also exists. We are seeing the return of heart pieces, which I'm happy to see, and I'm actually excited to be able to collect heart pieces with the abilities of the Echoes and Bind and such, because with this new style of Zelda, there's a lot of other ways we can come up with to find these pieces and solve these puzzles. So if anything, I'm more excited about heart pieces now than I ever have been before. But going beyond that, there are also references to other Zelda games. For example, they have brought back the Deku Scrubs from Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, and they're adding more lore to them. Deku Scrubs like sweets now. As a longtime fan, I really appreciate this development here. And it also looks like we're going to learn more about the differences between the river and the sea Zora. And I'm actually speculating that this might tie into how we see the Zora have changed in Breath and Tears, but we'll talk more about that at a later time. The point is that from what I'm seeing of Echoes of Wisdom, is that it is making good on that concept of the 2D Zelda prototype that was meant to test ideas for Breath of the Wild. We're seeing that actually being made into a game, but it's more than that. It's a true new entry to the 2D Zelda series, but it's also incorporating elements from prior Zelda games, not just Breath and Tears, and building upon the overall lore of the series. So I myself am excited for this quote-unquote 2D Breath of the Wild. I think it's going to be a good time, and as for the Zelda fans that are concerned, I just think we need to go in this with an open mind. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. This is Andres Restart, thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.